Hey champs, I'm going to demo the LPC swim chords exercise routine. First we're going to start off with some swim specific dynamic stretches. We're going to do single arm both directions, double arm both directions, alternating arm both directions, shoulder rotations both directions, and ankle rotations in both directions. Then we're going to do some swim specific exercises. First, we're going to start with one without the chords by simply doing front crawl in the mirror. Then we're going to use chords for the rest of them. I'm going to do EVF, which is double EVF and alternating EVF. Then move into the fly exercise, the front crawl exercise, two kinds of triceps, and finish with external rotator extensions. Let's get started. Find a place where you've got a little bit of room, which there's not a lot of room here, not a lot of ceiling height, but that's why I got to stand in this corner. And ideally, you're going to be monitoring your form in front of the mirror. So face the mirror so that you can see how, in fact, you're doing these stretches. We can start off with single arm rotation. I like going backwards to start and then go forward. Notice how I'm incorporating my hip roll into this dynamic stretch, keeping good posture, good chin posture as well. Breathing normally, not being too tense. Switch the arms, go backwards, using some hip roll, just like you would if you were swimming regular backstroke or regular front crawl in the pool. You would be engaging your core, you would be rolling from your hips. Then move on to double arm rotations. Start with smaller circles, feet shoulder width apart, slight knee bend. Good spinal postural alignment. Small circles, gradually getting bigger and keeping relaxed. Breathing. Get a big range of motion and switch to go forward. Small circles, bigger range of motion. Then my favorite one is the alternating arm. This one takes a little bit more coordination. Notice how my hips are rotating while I'm doing this. And this is the tricky part, it's just getting a good range of motion. If I didn't incorporate the hip roll, it would be hard to get that same range of motion. But we're rotating from the hips while we're doing this, getting a good range of motion. Mix it up. You can go a few arm rotations in one direction and then switch it up, go a few arm rotations in the other direction. You do this for 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. So in terms of how many reps you're doing, how long you're doing, best to not count, best to go by feel, and that way you can focus on the mechanics of the exercise and the stretch instead of counting how many reps you've done or how long you've done it. If you want, you can have a little stopwatch that you can view to see how long it's going, but I wouldn't put too much thought in terms of the duration or the reps. Probably best to go by feel instead. And you can change it up and you can go a lot longer some days, or as you continue to progress, you can increase the length and or length of duration and the amount of reps you're doing. Next, before we use these chords, and these chords are the fitness chords, ideally I like to you have paddles connected to them, so you can get ones that do have the paddles. But these work okay, and there's 3 different intensities. So this is the medium one. This one, the tension's a lot harder, so this one's good, for example, for the tricep exercise we'll do in a couple minutes. And then this one's a much easier one, so this one will be good for doing a lot longer duration or much higher reps, or good for an exercise such as the external rotator extensions where you shouldn't have too much load doing that particular exercise. But before we use the chords, it's always good to do front crawl in front of the mirror. And ideally, you have a setup where you can monitor your form head on when you're swimming front crawl, and also from the side view as well. And that's good for when you're using the chords, doing stretches, and also when you're swimming front crawl. So front crawl in the mirror, if you swim head on, you can monitor your form. You can see if you're getting good EVF. So EVF stands for early vertical forearm. You can see if you're pushing straight arm downwards, which we don't want. You can see if you're pushing diagonally downwards, which we also don't want. Instead, we want to enter with a flat hand entry. We want to try to visualize rolling over a barrel so that we could be pushing backwards on the water. If we were monitoring our form from the side view, we would see that flat hand entry rolling over the barrel and pushing backwards in the water. When we're swimming front crawl in the mirror, it should be similar to how we would employ that swimming in the aquatic environment. And one objective underneath the water is to always have the fingers below the wrist and the wrist below the elbows throughout the entire underwater range of motion. Another objective is to try to incorporate your hips when you're rolling. So when you're swimming in front of the mirror, and this arm's about to start the catch phase of the stroke, and this arm is about to start the recovery phase of the stroke, you're engaging your hip roll. And the roll is being led from the hips so that the torso and the shoulder all follows in unison. And that way, you're not rolling too much from the shoulder and torso relative to the hips. Rather, the hips are leading the roll so that the torso and the shoulder follow. So that, I think, is a good idea to do some front crawl in front of the mirror before you get into actually using the cords. The first cord exercise is what I call EVF. And again, that stands for early vertical forearm. And there's double EVF, which is just simply doing this reprogramming exercise. We're trying to minimize movement from the elbow to the shoulders, and instead just getting range of motion from the elbow below. So double EVF is doing this. Notice how the starting position is at a slight angle. Again, fingertips below elbow, elbow below shoulders. So this would be, if you're swimming front crawl in the water, that hand would be around 8 to 10 inches below the surface of the water. Elbows would be higher than the surface of the water. And we're just doing this range of motion, the start of the catch phase of the stroke. If you've got a mirror, you can monitor your form. You can see if there's movement from the elbow to the shoulder, if you're just getting this range of motion. Then you can move on to single EVF. So do several reps of that. Then you can move on to the fly exercise, which is that EVF, but then following through. EVF following through. So sort of like swimming butterfly in the water. When you're following through, you're really engaging your lats while you're doing that. In terms of head position, we're trying not to look straight up or look straight down, but instead trying to get that same head position that you would when you're swimming butterfly or front crawl in the water. Monitor your form from the side and also head on. Do several reps of this. Then you can move on to front crawl. So you're starting off with that EVF and then following through. EVF, following through. Do the several reps of this. Again, monitoring your form from the side and also head on. You can change the intensity by walking forward or walking backwards to make it harder tension, or to make it a little bit easier by moving forward. Try to get down a little bit low so you're not standing straight up, and that way you can get that arm in a similar postural alignment as if you would if you were swimming. Then you can move on to triceps. If you want, you can keep the same chords. If you want to make it more difficult, you can go to the higher intensity. So this one's a much harder tension, so this would be for lower reps. And this will be double triceps. We're just getting that finish phase of the stroke. And again, I'm kind of getting into a nice arrow tuck here. Do a few reps, and then you can do alternating tricep extensions. So this can get pretty tiring after a while, depending on how long you're going to do it for. You can just fly through this whole routine and do a few sets of it. Lastly, we will finish with the external rotator extension. So I'm just going to use the easy resistance for this, just to make sure. This is one where you want to make sure you have good form. Very good one to do in front of the mirror. You want to make sure you're not slouching, you're not using other muscles to do this exercise. Instead, just keeping good posture and you're externally rotating. I don't think it's that important to do internal rotations. So internal rotations would be holding like this and going inwards. You could do this exercise, but in everyday life we spend a lot of time doing internal rotations, whereas we tend to be a little bit weaker in the small little muscles in the rotator cuff and the back part. So the external rotator extensions will help to isolate and improve the strength of those muscles. So several reps of external rotator extensions. Switch it up and go the other direction so that you're going both ways. Will be important for this exercise. And that's really the whole routine. I forgot to demonstrate for the dynamic stretches the shoulder rotations, which is just simply doing shoulder rotations in both directions. This is a great one to do not just before swimming, but especially if you're a triathlete, you spend lots of time in the arrow position, just to get some range of motion, just get a little bit loose by doing some shoulder rotations. Also doing some ankle rotations. I'll bring this so you can see this chart again. Also doing some ankle rotations where you're just going to balance on one foot, and you can do ankle rotations in both directions. That'll be good to just get a little bit more range of motion and flexibility, which will help with flutter kicking in the water. So that's the basic routine. There's so many variations in terms of how many reps, duration, and intensity, so progress. And although it doesn't really replace an actual swim workout, it really can help to build some fitness, but then also to just give you a visual where in the water you can't really see your form maybe as effectively, but in front of a mirror you can really see how is your posture, how are your arm mechanics.